Hi folks, it's me again, John Watson. This is Ask the Master on ICC, shown you on YouTube, and every week we have this show so that players in the chess world and listeners and people who are chess fans can submit questions to me about the chess world, really any aspect of the chess world. We do an awful lot of openings. We're not going to do much of that this week unless you ask me on the chat. And training, history, predictions, competitions, problems, all this sort of thing. Everything's up and available. The best way to send questions is ask Watson at chessclub.com. And let me just check something here while I'm at it. Okay, that's not what I wanted, but that's okay. Anyway, ask Watson at chessclub.com. You can send an email to. I've gotten a lot of these emails and I continue to get them, and it's really great with really good questions. That allows you to really think about your questions. If you want to just fire something off, and if you're an ICC member, you can send me a message. That's message space John L. Watson, which is JOHN L as in lion, WATSON. Okay, so this week I thought I'd do something a little different. We have a tendency to do a lot of analysis of games and of openings, and we'll do a little bit of that. But I wanted to kind of think about what we did last week and some of those questions and more general questions. So I think we'll mostly talk about that kind of thing. Let me go back to the last week's show. Hello, everybody on the chat. Oh, I should have mentioned, you can ask me a question on the chat right in front of you. And that's a very good place to ask. In fact, we have one right now from Jeremy 3, 9 Jeremy 3. Is that Jeremy Silman? Are you gonna confess up? This is who you found has her moments against players 2700 and up, but clearly she has weaknesses that are holding her back. What do you think those weaknesses are, and do you think she can fix them? I probably have to go look at her games and see about that. She had a really bad streak in this last tournament. She started out, I think, 4 out of 5 or something in Isle of Man, and then lost a bunch of games. So who won? Elyunov won on tie breaks. Caruana won his last game. Elyunov drew his last game, and so it was a tie. And Elyunov won on the tie breaks, which is kind of only justice because Caruana, of course, won. The U.S. team won on tie breaks against Elyunov's team in the Olympiad. Yes, we have a honored guest here, Jeremy Silman, one of our top people we've ever had on this show, who if you haven't heard of him, you probably almost all of you have heard of him and his books, but just for those of you who haven't or are younger and maybe haven't seen them, he has the very best books in the world on, well, on many subjects probably, but in particular for teaching people to become masters, I would say. People who are a little bit experienced usually, but not necessarily that much, and need to improve and ask the kind of people who are on the show and ask me questions. So you can even ask him on the chat some questions if you want to, but he's written some fantastic books, most famously Reassess Your Chess, the Reassess Your Chess yearbook, Jeremy, what am I missing? Obvious things, real classics on chess strategy and teaching chess. Also his Endgame book is absolutely fantastic. It's probably the best one out there and very friendly. Jeremy writes with a sense of humor, but also extremely clearly, and has really appeals. Many players have sworn by him as having improved their game from, especially from, say, the range. Now, I hope he doesn't think this is wrong, but something like 16 or 1800 all the way up to moving them up to master, which is exactly the kind of people who are on this show. So who you found? Let me think. Okay, I'll do chat. I'll get to this other stuff. I'll go back and forth between the questions that have been asked and last week's questions and the ones on the chat right now, since we're getting chat questions a little faster than usual. I'm trying to think. Wow, sometimes just at the critical moments towards the end of the game, towards time control, I guess, she just gets a little outplayed by some of the other players. So it's just so hard. Winning and losing is so, like in any top sport at the very top levels where you're playing at that super level like Hugh Yifan does, anything above 2700, the games are decided by the smallest things. Time management, just a little oversight, or one person playing a little more practically and maybe setting a little trap, even with hardly any time left, that's easy to fall for. So I see that I'm frozen on the streaming channel here. So let me, why don't you send me a chat and tell me if this is coming through anyway. My own stream has sort of frozen here. So if you guys are okay, send me a quick chat and say, yeah, the show is still coming through. Because if not, I'll refresh this and start over again. Okay, an autobiography of a goat. Yeah, this is Jeremy's autobiography, which is incredibly funny and very risque. Don't show it to your children. Uh, yes, goats are great chess. He doesn't mean greatest of all time either. He means goat, literally. What's your opinion of the bishop before check line of the Scotch? Okay, so this is a good point to stop. Okay, I get an okay, so that's good. My own, I won't worry about what it looks like on my screen then. That's not really that important. And the person, getting all kinds of questions. This is great. Usually I don't get much at the beginning. So what I will do is I'll tell you the first thing I'm going to show you, since that's very short anyway, and then you'll see the game up in front of you. Last week, someone mentioned the famous Christensen-Karpov miniature, and I thought I'd show it because I couldn't recreate it. I just didn't remember. I had actually the wrong opening. And let me show you that real fast. This is a real quick one, so we won't get all involved in analysis. Turned out it was a Queen's Indian. I had thought that it was a Paulson because Karpov likes the Paulson, and because the kind of position that comes up was very much like, let me just make a move here or something. Here we go. Was very much like the kind of thing where black plays some kind of, let me just make a move here or something. It was something kind of like, sort of like this. Oh, I'm sorry, no, there was the bishop b5 thing. But anyway, the idea was somehow, let's just make a crazy move for black and white. Let's say black defended this. I just want to show you something sort of similar. That black had put this here to defend this square. White had maybe retreated, black had made a move, and all of a sudden white won a piece with this little crazy little fork. That's what I was trying to reproduce. Well, it turns out that's completely wrong. What happened was the exact same idea, but from a Queen's Indian. That's the Petrosian system, A3. Okay, the c-pawn's attacked, so whoops, so this is all standard stuff. Having diverted the queen, black comes back again and then attacks in the center. And look, we get a Sicilian-like position. And this is how that queen came up there. I couldn't remember how the queen got there. Well, it's because it was a Queen's Indian. So here we go. All sort of standard stuff. And this is a unique move. The idea is drive the bishop off that beautiful diagonal. And so Karpov positionally is doing something great here. And now he makes a completely logical move. This is a standard move anyway in this kind of position, and it covers the f4 square and helps black get castled quickly and maybe play f5 even. So everything looks fine, except at this point Christensen played the clever move, queen d1, and Karpov had to resign. 12 moves? Certainly the shortest game ever played by a world championship in a very, very serious top-level tournament. Lost by a world champion, anyway. Well, maybe not the shortest. I'd have to go look it up, but certainly one of the very shortest ever. So that's the Christensen-Karpov game that someone was asking about in the chat, and I wasn't able to dredge up. Okay, let me go back to the chat, and then we'll show you some other stuff that I've come up with this week based on what happened last week. Okay, what's your opinion of the bishop before check line? You know, we recommended this years ago in Big Book of Busts, I think it was, 30 years ago, to play this against the Scotch. I've gotten a little more skeptical of it. Okay, so the idea is instead of playing bishop c5, which by the way I think is still just a really good line, bishop b5 has two possibilities now here and takes, and after takes there's the famous queen f6 move threatening checkmate and also hitting that way. And this is a complicated line, but I tend to think black's just fine here. Could be wrong. There's all kinds of gambity ideas. For example, if that move, then there's things where black plays queen g6 and then white sacrifices that pawn. You can look all this up. So a version of that, which is meant to stop, for example, the main line now, of course, goes like this, and then if white plays there, black plays here. That's the old Scotch. And of course, the other main line is to take and play e5. But the main point here is that by playing bishop b4 check, excuse me, now knight c3 would walk right into that pin, and this line is maybe what black has avoided the knight takes c6 line by doing this, and black's very happy with this. This is traditionally considered dead equal. People keep trying to revive it, but they never seem to get anywhere. I think that's a fair statement over the last, 70 years. People occasionally try to play this for white and don't seem to get anywhere. So what you've avoided by doing that is playing this immediately and allowing knight takes c6, which is more difficult. Now, why can't white play c3? Well, he does. That's what white will almost always play. The idea is you've used up that square now, so that when black goes back here, for example, and if white just made some sort of random move and black played here, then that pawn would not be defensible by the move knight c3. That's kind of the point. Let me see. I don't know if I can dredge up my old theory on this. I remember there's a bishop b6 move. Presumably white can play this right away, threatening to win a piece with knight takes, because that hits the queen and the bishop. And then I think bishop b6 is played, or at least in the old days it used to be played. And so you just get a game. Black's still intending to play maybe either knight here or knight here, usually knight f6, I think, and then d5. And of course castles. I tend to think it's a tempo up for white. That's important. White's gained that tempo, and he still owns most of the center. And my impression, the last time I looked at this, even though I recommended playing this way for black years ago, was that white keeps the small edge. Now you'll have to look up why that is. It's yeah, Karpov played the Paulson a couple times actually, and that's why I thought that's what the line was. He's not a big Sicilian player, but when he did play the Sicilian, that's one of the things he played. Okay, got all kinds of people on here. Oh, Eric Schiller, John Thomas, all kinds of people who are really quite famous in the chess world here. This is a great thing. Okay, so I'd have to look this up, but last time I looked at this, I thought white was just better, which kind of makes a little sense because he's got a nice space advantage. But you should check out the theory and recent games and see what you think. I'm sure it's playable. It's still recommended in some books. I've seen it, and they're in articles or books somewhere. Just not real convinced. Is the Pirc defense good or bad? Well, that's quite a general question. I actually think it's kind of fun. Moskalenko has that wonderful Pirc book out, and there's a lot of Pirc books. Marin has a Pirc DVD repertoire out. Who has played it? Baramidze, I think, has played it for a long time. There are quite a few decent players that have played it for a long time. It's still not a mainstream opening, is it? We've looked at some Pirces on this show. This is the Pirc defense. I should show everybody is this, attacking here. And usually white plays here. There are systems with bishop d3 and c3 and that kind of thing, but I think black's pretty happy with those. So this is the Pirc defense, playing g6 here. A type of Pirc defense is this, but most people think of this more as a kind of a Philidor-ish kind of thing. And white can go into this endgame. We've even talked about this endgame. In fact, I recommend in a recent book that maybe this is a more interesting move than has been thought of in the past. The usual move has been this, and then black originally played this move and played with the doubled pawns, which I think is still sound, but then switched to this, and a lot of the top players switched to just king e8, and it has been doing fine. I think it's very interesting to play bishop g5 first, but I won't go into any detail there. The Pirc proper is when you fianchetto. It's like a King's Indian, except that white hasn't played c4. So that means white has less control of the center, but he's better developed. White's better developed. And of course, there's all kinds of systems. We've looked at some stuff here. We've also looked at the modern a little bit. Is it good or bad? Well, I would say it's definitely not bad because top players still play it. It's obviously okay. The question is, does it really equalize? Most openings equalize if you play them well. The Pirc, it could be that you're still leaving yourself a tiny disadvantage in some lines. Even the most critical f4 lines, I'm not sure if they're completely equal. Black's been switching to, notice recently there have been some games with, well, there's still c5, of course. Okay, well, I don't know. I better not go into too much detail here, but basically, because we've got other stuff to cover, but these knight c6 lines are very interesting, I think. Playing knight c6 early. It's an old way of playing, and a lot of times black plays d5 early, and used to be thought to be slightly better for white, and now quite a few people seem to think it's okay for black. The other, of course, main line is this, a la, what Fischer played against Spassky, and there's all kinds of fun stuff here for both sides. I mean, this goes on forever. There's the very fun line that maybe, I don't know if it's working as well as it used to, but I always used to enjoy this idea, which has to do with playing e5, which is a tremendously favorable pawn structure, and sometimes playing queen b5. That's not necessarily an advantage, but it was something that was fairly new a couple of years ago, and it's now well known, I guess, but always struck me as a really nice way to deviate, really interesting line for white. Okay, thank you for telling me that everything's working. My screen is still frozen, but I'm not going to worry about it. Likes the Paulson. Well, of the Sicilians, he's played the Paulson. Okay, Scotch, he doesn't play the Sicilian very much. He didn't play the Sicilian very much, but Okay, that's got looks like a knight c3 reversed Elyekins. Think about that. Knight c3 reversed Elyekins. Well, that's quite possible. I have to think about it. Oh, the mate threat. Okay, there you go. Oh, you're like white playing against Elyekins. Yeah, I can see that. That's certainly possible. Um, I would show that, except I think we probably want to get onto some other stuff here. What I wanted to talk about this week, a little different, is a little more words and fewer maybe specific opening, although I did get some opening questions. There was this question about a couple things that I wasn't able to answer very well on the chat. There was a question about what books have been written on the bishop b5 Czech Sicilian, the Moscow variation, and that's this. And since it's used by so many people, including some of my students, because this is just such hell to learn, and it maybe isn't always that good anyway, or it's what black wants anyway. A lot of people played this, and the listeners chimed in with some answers, which was really cool. Gawain Jones, How to Beat the Sicilian Defense. That's Everyman Chess 2011, by the way. And Richard Palliser's book, The Bishop B5 Sicilian. And an obvious one I missed was Alexei Kornev's book, which is more recent. It's published in 2015 for Chess Stars. It's called Rossolimo and Friends, A Complete Repertoire versus the Sicilian, and includes a very thorough repertoire with bishop b5 check, and also with bishop b5 knight c6, which is what a lot of people who play bishop b5 check are probably going to play anyway. This is officially the Rossolimo. More top players play the Rossolimo than play bishop b5 check. Not that top players haven't played this. That's how Caruana beat Anand, for example. And I mean, a lot of people have played this, but very common now is this. It's been, in fact, it's so strong or so irritating that it's been discouraging knight c6 on the second move for black. I also saw I mentioned some videos, and two that are relatively recent are. This is for bishop b5 check, by the way. Let's get this straighter. There's plenty of videos on the Rossolimo also, but the Moscow variation, Damian Lemos has an Empire Chess 2 DVD set with a repertoire on bishop b5 check, and it's called Destroy the Sicilian, and it features this interesting line, by the way, which is kind of a reverse English opening thing with a4. I think it's kind of a cool thing to look into. Something different anyway. White's probably not going to get a forced advantage from this, but he's going to get a playable game and an interesting game, and if black goes wrong, white will definitely get an advantage. So it's interesting to look this up. Now Luc Van Vele, one of the world's top players for many, many years, also has a video on this, one of those 60-minute chess-based videos, and of course he recommends the main move, which is bishop takes. The German book I was thinking about last week, the old German book, is actually called Sizilianisch mit Läufer B5 by Rainer Kraut, Schachverlag, Kanya 1996. It's very, very thorough, 351 pages, but obviously a little bit dated, 1996. But still, you might want to look it up, especially because you guys are kind of book fans. There are older books by Gambit, The Easy Guide to the Bishop B5 Sicilian by Stefan Pettersson, but that's 1999. There are a couple books from Best Chess Editions, which is from Belgrade, by Milan Skoko and Goran Kosanovic. And for really obscure references, there's a 1984 book from Batsford called The Anti-Sicilian 3 Bishop B5 Check by Yuri Razuvayev and Alexander Matsukevich. And guess what? I wasn't going to mention this, but this book was translated by none other than Eric Schiller, who is on the chat right now. So that's really cool. And he translated from Russian. He did several translations, a Russian expert as well as a great linguist. So Eric, kudos to you. And that book probably still has some original ideas. I think that's the thing about all these old sources. You'll find some original ideas. It's just, I have to admit, it's a question of how much money and time you want to put into looking at old things when you have more recent sources to look at. But just for fun, we know that all the great players have scoured old literature for ideas. Fischer and Kasparov, and found some pretty interesting stuff. Okay, let me see what else we have here. Oh, Alan's talking about what specifically his comment was on, and that deserves a look. He's talking about, oh, I see. Okay, here we go. Bishop c4, knight takes c3, queen f3. Very much so. Very much like the Scotch, actually. That's kind of cool. At least I think he's talking about that. Let me think. Yeah, knight c3, queen f3. Cool. Okay, here's another one. Okay, I won't go back to my older questions from last week. We'll just go ahead and hit this. Chats always take precedence, or at least a certain amount of precedence. So what's the question? c4, e5. G3, knight F6. Oh, I got a question, by the way, about a C4 things. Okay, here we go. Reverse dragon, at least potentially a reverse dragon. Knight C3, knight B6. This is called the reverse dragon because it's sort of like E4, C5 for black, a tempo up for white. It's the English opening with C4. And one point here, by the way, is that this kind of move is considered a little slow, although it's a little more interesting probably than theory says it is, because white can immediately break through in the center, just so you kind of know about this funny knight b6 looking. If you've never seen this before, that's a very odd move, but it's just because the options aren't all that great. Okay, knight f3, knight c6, castles bishop e7. Okay. Play rook b1. Do you think this leads to good play for white? That's the recommendation of Christopher Silman in his C4 English repertoire videos, which I think are on Chess 24. I hope I don't get that wrong. Oh, Chess Openings 24. Oh, I hope I didn't get that wrong. I think it's on the Chess Openings 24 site. You can look it up. Chess 24, basically. Which is, I guess, chess24.com is what it's called. Oh, I hope I got that right. Yeah, chess24.com. And that's Christopher Silman. He has a whole repertoire with rook b1. It's an older move. I'll tell you something interesting about this. This is kind of fun. The main lines, of course, black castles and white tries to play b4. Christopher thinks a5 is the best move. This is very recent. I just looked at this recently. I haven't looked at rook b1 in a long time. I know a lot of other lines, by the way, besides rook b1 that I could recommend to you. He thinks a5 is the best move, simply stopping b4. And one thing white can do now is go back to kind of the normal lines, but with a5 already in. And let me see how that goes. I think it goes something like, well, it's basically d3, but I don't know about the order. But he basically says go back to the d3, bishop e3 lines, and the inclusion of these moves is actually good for white. Now, whether that's true or not is another issue. You have to look into that. I think a fascinating move, which I think is in my book, Mastering the Chess Openings, might be some other places too, is this move, which he does talk about, but I'm not sure if I agree with his conclusions. It's a great move because the idea is very simple. It's either h5, h4, or even g4, followed by h5, h4. And one thing white can do, which he doesn't mention, is you can try and sacrifice a pawn, because this is a very loose move, and working in the center makes a lot of sense. But his main line is something like this, and then it splits into h5 and g4. But the basic idea is that black just goes for broke and tries to checkmate, and there's all kinds of really fun stuff here that both sides can play. And white's got to be okay. The question is, does white really have an advantage here? And it's not so easy. It's not as easy as he makes it out to be. If white can just sort of get some pieces off maybe, or drive this back, he's probably going to stand better because these are very loosening moves, and if they don't lead to some sort of checkmate or open lines, then white's going to be pretty happy. But it's not that simple, as you would see. So you might want to look into that. That's a really fun line. Yeah, I would be willing to play that over the board for black just because I think it's such a blast. Basically, it's a pretty good move. It's definitely a respectable move. I would strongly suggest getting that video. Try to just, I don't know if you have to join Chess24 for that, but or if you can somehow get it separately. But that would be a good way to study a recent recommendation, very recent. Like I think maybe even this month or last month or something. So that's I don't know, a superficial answer to that. I would say yes, that's for sure playable, rook b1. Whether it's any better than the main lines, I don't know. I really can't say. To show you something really funny that I played in a practice fun game recently, or just kind of a goof around game. Something I wanted to try for years, and somebody played this against me. Let's see if I can get this right now. And it's to play here. And what's it? Because that covers that square, so there's knight g5 ideas, for example, and it just connects the rooks, right? And what's supposed to be wrong about that is this move, re-centralizing the knight and presumably forcing that, and then black's well centralized, and really, how good are these pieces anyway? This knight no longer goes to e4 or a4 and c5, but the idea of it is go ahead and give up the two bishops, just play there. You want to try this out? I think it's really fun. And then you're still playing for that kind of idea. So you've given up the bishops, which is of course a horrible thing to do in chess. But look at all the time you've gained, and you're attacking this pawn, and the rook's already where it's supposed to be, over on the queen side. And you can just do a standard queen side attack here. I don't think I'd claim white's better, but I think it would be nice. Yeah, Korchnoi suggests you didn't trust it. That's right. That's true. Okay, John's talking about, this is great. We've got so many experts here. John's talking about that G5 move again. It's true. The first game's theory will tell you that black's not supposed to be okay here. And I think Korchnoi, is it in his notes that he talks about d4? Somebody actually analyzes d4, which makes so much sense. If black's going to play a crazy move and weaken his position, maybe it's time to sacrifice a pawn. A pawn sacrifice that isn't so bad anyway, usually, d4. So it'd go something like, this kind of thing. And but I analyze this a lot, and I'm just not that convinced. I think it's one of those things that's better than it's supposed to be for black. Let me put it that way. Yes, I think Korchnoi. That's interesting. It was a Korchnoi game, wasn't it? He played it even? Did he play it? That's cool. Thank you, John. Yeah, that sort of rings a bell. So A4 was a favorite of Shirazi. That's in what? Which line is that? I'm sorry, I'm going back to Jeremy's comment. This could be fun. We could actually skip all of my preparation. We could just look at stuff that on the chat. The chat is so much more fun, really. A4. Jeremy, you might want to, if you're still on, tell me which A4 we're talking about. Might be that Scotch. Might be that Scotch. Oh, interesting. I could imagine that. Okay. So isn't A3 played? Absolutely. A3 is played more often than anything else. Either D3 or A3 first. Either D3 first or A3. Usually A3 first. And then black has all kinds of ideas. He can stop B4 or he can just simply allow it. And there's countless variations. I mean, there are literally thousands of master games with this. And even more correspondence games. And it's scary how much theory there is on this kind of thing. This is sort of a typical main line. To just play for B4 anyway, and black often tries to get this move in at some point. The other thing you can do is wait for B4. That's even more common, which is to play something like this and this, and then something like this happens and black plays. This is one of the main lines here. Black can also play knight D4 without A5, and that's maybe a little better than its reputation. It's considered not as good. The idea here is if you drop that pawn, there's a bishop B3, at least I think. Hope I didn't get the move order wrong here, but I think this is sort of the main line. And white often plays here and tries to reorganize with that move followed by either queen E2 or queen C2. So I'm being really superficial here, but that's kind of one of the old reverse dragon main lines. Okay, Jeremy has clarified what he's saying here. Oh, the A4 line, yeah, that I mentioned. Yeah, I think this is so interesting. Interesting, I didn't know that, so this is cool. Shirazi played this. This is the famous Kamran Shirazi, who's still playing, I believe, has never stopped. Player with kind of a crazy style, so it kind of makes sense that he might play this. Or C4. C4 now. That looks like a BOGO. C4 now? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's possible. Shows what I know. Eric, did you write a book about this? I can almost believe you wrote a book about Bishop B5 because you know about a lot of these sort of irregular anti-Sicilians. Don't think it's very good. Well, of course not, because Jeremy's on the black side of these things. But yeah, it's probably not all that good. But it's an interesting thing to propose as a repertoire, an entire repertoire. I'm sure he has some pretty good ideas. Limos probably has some pretty good suggestions about how to play it. C4 in this position, that's really interesting. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that. I guess one idea is if black plays slowly, then at some point there's a D4 and you have just a Maroczy bind with your bishop in front of the pawn chain. And if black takes that pawn is a cramping pawn, I assume. Yeah, that's interesting. Sort of reminds me of a BOGO Indian or something. It wouldn't surprise me if white didn't have pretty good play here. You're left with your good bishop. He's left with his semi-bad bishop. So how cute. Okay, so then we have, what do we have? Okay. Shirazi was in Searching for Bobby Fischer. I didn't know that. Remember Asa Hoffman was. G5 was Serper Korchnoi. Interesting. Yeah, we saw that one Serper game in an earlier show. Fantastic. These are terrific comments. You guys know more than I do. It's often true. Let me let me talk about something else though that came up last week because I think that was sort of important. Per Eric Bredbacke, who is one of our loyal contributors and best fans here, asked about, this is on the chat, asked about what books I'd recommend on pawn structures. Oh, and by the way, he mentioned something about not putting it on the chat but not really asking it in detail and how maybe he shouldn't put things on the chat. But I guess I think any question like that is going to lead to a big, interesting discussion, even if it's not exactly going to lead to the answer that you exactly wanted. And so it's worth throwing up anything on the chat. It's we're not. I suggest anything you're thinking of, just throw up there, and we'll have some fun. Yeah, here we go. This is the bishop before check bogo that I was talking about. Yeah, and that I have studied. That one's a lot of fun, actually. I think it's also got a bunch of DVDs on it, but I guess I'm unconvinced. I was going to play this as black, actually, so I studied this a lot. I'm not totally convinced about this, but it's fun. Eric teaches it. Yeah, that's fun. All right, so we have, so this is a Bogo Indian line you might want to look at. There's another DVD, entire DVD based, or no, lecture series, I think, based on this. So if you go online, you can find this lecture series based on this system. And who is it? Who suggests it? Can't remember. Can't remember exactly which source this is. People played it for a while on the top levels. Okay, I'll tell you, I'm probably going to make a fool of myself here, but I remember thinking that I just was so unconvinced about these A3 lines. It's the only line that really worried me. Almost everybody plays an early G3, by the way. That's what everybody plays, either after taking or not taking. They play these G3 lines. And I guess I thought black ended up sort of okay in those lines. You know, the usual idea is at some point you're taking this and you're playing this structure here. That's your sort of goal as black, getting rid of your dark square bishop and then putting your pawns on dark squares. It's kind of fun. Those lines seem kind of fun, but this whole, and same thing after this, by the way. I'm sorry. So the same thing happens here, whether you play G3 first or not. Black is playing for these moves, whether you play A3 or G3. My problem is that an early G3 just started bugging, A3 started bugging me more and more. And you know, structurally, it's a pretty strange thing to have, you know, to have that kind of ending pawn structure where these don't have any mobility, and you've got that nice extra. Let me just show you that. Let me just try something here. And I'm not going to show you exact analysis here. You can even take with the rook here, because that knight can come right into the center. And that rook's, well, it's an open file, isn't it? And it has nice scope in this direction, too. I just like white. White's got more space. I'm not quite sure why white shouldn't be better here. And concretely, I was willing to play this for black, but I got less and less excited about it. That's just my opinion, though, and you might want to take a look at it. Now we have looks like some kind of hedgehoggy thing. Oh, a double fianchetto. Yeah, this is a completely different thing, but let's do it. I mean, let's go chat this year. This week we're going to do chat. C5 creates some interesting, very interesting positions and ideas. I absolutely agree. But I'm just saying personally, I kind of started liking white in these positions, but just something that happened to me. That was when I was looking at it a little more carefully. I don't remember all the details. Okay, but it's so much fun that ideas like this are around in chess. I mean, years ago, no one would have even considered this move. It just would have been considered basically illegitimate or something that only one player played and nobody paid much attention to. Now it's been played a lot. Okay, we have a new one. Let's go for it. We have some kind of double fianchetto symmetrical English. It looks like. Okay, so we're playing a regular English opening, symmetrical English opening. It looks like. And we're playing, oh no, it's not a double fianchetto. Okay, so it's a little different, excuse me. It's just the old D5 line. Now, by the way, D4, just for the record, if you're playing white here, I would play D4 first. And the reason for that is I think D5, even though not many people play it, is actually a pretty good move. Maybe even here. Maybe even here, or one move before. Oh, I know. Well, okay. First of all, this may be true that this is an okay. This might even equalize, which is really surprising. But the other thing is, of course, black can play D5 now. That's right. And this line's not so easy to play. I'm not thrilled with this. White can even play D4 here, which is really weird. So I would play, just as a tip here, since you're obviously white in these positions, maybe play this first. You'll get the same position. Black doesn't have anything better to do than castle. I can just testify to that. And so what we have here is the old classical line. Now you have to learn these lines, of course, where you sacrifice this pawn. I don't know. You want to check that out. It's still a controversial line. It's still not, I don't think, completely clear. But this is a very traditional line, again, played hundreds and hundreds of times. And you're getting the move rook d1. That's what I recommended, actually, in a couple of my books. I agree. I think this is a very interesting line. I'm surprised. Yeah, and it still hasn't gotten much publicity. I don't know, 20 years ago, I was the only one that I know that talked about this line. The main line, by the way, is queen d3 to get out of the way of this queen d3. And I think it favors white somewhat too. I like white in these positions, and you can find tons of analysis on this in various books, including my own. But I think rook d1 is fascinating because it has this idea of c5, which people have sort of, I think, underestimated in a way. And I don't know if I want to go into any detail here, if you want to go into any detail, but it's quite a oh, okay. So the Siliki, well, let's get back to that. So here's a line. Okay, what used to be thought to be bad about rook d1? Let me see if I can remember this. Is it a6? Actually, I'm mistaken about this. It's my fault. I don't know this line. I just got mixed up. It wasn't rook d1 immediately that I was recommending. Okay, because here he has this threat, and I was never that thrilled with this. So that's interesting. You might want to add to the chat what you're doing about just bishop e6. What I was thinking of, and it's my fault, I was thinking about that in this position, which is quite famous, playing rook d1 here, because there's this little c5 idea that I think people have really, really underestimated, even though it's such an elementary idea. And I had really good luck with this, both analytically and in, I mean, even if you look at the computer even, it's going to like this position for white, I think. It's just an underestimated move. I won one nice game with it. One of the points is that black used to be thought to just play there. It was supposed to be a good move. And I think what people missed is how good this move is, attacking here and still threatening c5. And in fact, I played a couple games with this. No one played bishop f5, but that was the book solution, was bishop f5. So my apologies, it wasn't rook d1 right away. So rook d1 right away is a whole separate issue. I think the problem with that was always this move, because taking this is too, black gets too active. I think something like that. So here I am, not totally sure what's going on here, but I might want to look into it. But that's the old theory, is that rook d1 immediately is not that great. Fischer, of course, played bishop g5, which really turned out not to do much after just this move. But it worked for one game, and that was good enough. Okay, so what do we have here? We have huge book. Okay, Jeremy says there's a huge book by Siliki. Boy, we'll never get to the stuff I prepared this week, which is actually just fine. Huge book by Siliki on this c5 line. That book is called there's, what is it? There's something about the Bogo. Playing the Nimzo and Bogo. I've actually used that book. And it's a great book. It's a big, long book about playing the Nimzo Indian and the Bogo Indian. Or maybe it's just the one on the Bogo. Maybe Jeremy can tell me. There is one just on the Bogo with endless analysis. Yeah, I believe that. I did look at that book, though, and I wasn't that, still wasn't that thrilled with it for black. This looks like a reverse form of the c4 bishop e5 check. Yeah. Would not play this line. Perhaps the wrong book. In the book, he pushes a5 instead. There we go. The Siliki Bogo book has a5. That's right. He recommends a5, but there is a book with c5. In fact, maybe Siliki even has a sub-chapter. One of these books recommends a5, but has a chapter on c5 also. So you may be right about Siliki. Somebody actually has it as a secondary choice, and it may be even in that book. a5 is definitely not as much fun as c5. Okay, the rook should be on b1. I don't know which line that is. There's a very good game with rook d1 from Rogoff Zuckerman, Chicago 74. John, who won that game, and what do you think of rook d1? Is rook d1 any good? My suspicion is that it isn't as good as playing queen d3 and then rook d1. Okay, queen in one diagonal with bishop on g7. Yeah, that's right. That's the problem. Thyloful 28 full mentions that that's the issue. Oh, I wish I could get back to this game. I don't have it. I have to just make it separately. For those who I went too fast, here's another. The order's not that big a deal, but this kind of thing. For those who went too fast, this is how we got to this position. We were talking about this position. The original questioner had a different order. And we were talking about this position, which is a famous position. And we were originally saying over the years, people have played this move way more than anything else. It's a very good move, by the way. One of the ideas is to play like this, but the other idea is just get out of the way of that diagonal. And what Theophil just pointed out is that if you leave the queen there, you're staying on the diagonal against the bishop on g7. But of course, that's an intentional decision. Fischer did that too, played bishop g5. So you're right, there's a disadvantage of leaving the queen there. The question is it a fatal disadvantage or not? And John Thomas, I'm wondering if rook d1 was in this position. It very well might have been. Boy, I could use more information about this. I would need to see a good answer to that move, because I know in the old days when I was even more addicted to the English opening and English opening theory, that was the problem. I was trying to do anything for white in this position, because when I first played the English opening as white, this line was considered an equalizer for black. Then as time went on, I got happier and happier for white, but not with rook d1, with other moves. So cool, we've got a nice theoretical battle going on here. And we go back. Keep going. Now that I've gotten distracted here. Okay, now the other thing we were asked about last week that I thought was worth talking about, one of the other things was about pawn structures. Per Eric Bredbach, as I say, asked about what books I'd recommend on pawn structures. And I'm a strong advocate of learning pawn structures. I think it's just absolutely essential. And I should mention that learning basic pawn structures is not just good just for knowing the ideas of what to do in those pawn structures. The positional ideas and the planning ideas is also good because they're characteristic tactics, what I call characteristic tactics. I don't know, there may be other names for that, but that's what I always call them, in particular pawn structures. And you want to know those tactics. So it's not just for positional reasons, it's for tactical reasons too. So I looked at, we had mentioned Andy Soltis's pawn structure chess and Hans Gemach's pawn power in chess, and I really don't strongly recommend either one of those. I looked at Soltis's book again, and it just doesn't have that many structures, or talk about how to play them, partly because he uses up a lot of space annotating positions that aren't relevant to the theme of pawn structures. And it's not that long a book, but the idea is great, and of course you can still learn from that book. He does some very basic structures that everybody really should know, just not my favorite. Now, a very recent book is The Power of Pawns, Chess Structure Fundamentals for Post-Beginners. Someone alerted me to this. I haven't even looked at it or read it, so I don't know how good it is, but it was recommended by someone who sent me a message. From the description, it looks like it might be a little more elementary. I looked it up online than some of you might like, but I'll bet it's a pretty good book. Hickel is well known, and I'll report back when I dig up my copy. So now a couple of you on the chat came up with the 2015 book Chess Structures by Mauricio Flores Rios, which we had actually mentioned before. And I looked the book over quite a bit since last week, and I think it might really help people who, it's probably a pretty good answer to the question about pawn structures. I have to say it's also a pretty specialized book, especially for such a long book, and not really all that comprehensive. So that difficulty arises again, but that by playing out all the games and analyzing tactical situations and pawn and endings, way past where the basic pawn structure has disappeared, or even the connection of the pawn structure to the endgame has disappeared, that means that there's an awful lot of space used up that has nothing to do with structures. So I think that's a real drawback to the book. I don't think this full game format, even though it's easy to write books that way, is as good for this particular subject of pawn structures. I think it's fine to stop at move 25, or even stop way into the endgame if the pawn structure is relevant to the endgame. But to just talk about what happened in a game at great length when it no longer has anything to do with the pawn structures, maybe, to me, it doesn't make as much sense. That's not why you're buying that book. Nevertheless, this is a great book. I strongly recommend it. I'm looking at it and I'd say it's definitely worth having. Here's a quote from the introduction. Chess Structures, a Grandmaster Guide, emphasizes clarity, this is the author speaking, precision and completeness over generality. I do not intend to teach rules applicable to every position. Such rules typically do not exist. Moreover, even if such rules existed, the chance that such a complex message will be misunderstood is far too high. Let's not risk it. My aim is to provide an easy-to-understand strategic guide to the most frequently occurring classes of positions in chess. I hope readers will find this helpful as it greatly reduces ambiguity. It is clear when rules will be valid and when they will not. In this sense, this book is a collection of analyzed model games, which is what it is, complete games, logically organized into families of similar positions with common strategic ideas. Naturally, the best and least ambiguous way to classify chess positions is based on their pawn structure. I divide this book into 24 chapters which discuss the most interesting and common structures in modern practice. These positions encompass a wide variety of openings and middle games which are present in a vast majority of all chess games. So I like that description. Vast majority of all chess games is very strange comment. I mean, I haven't done any statistical analysis, but I don't think you'll find that a vast majority of chess games, certainly a very many games get into one or another of these structures, especially in top level Grandmaster chess, but maybe vast majority is a little overstated, but that's just my initial impression. Okay, so here are the sections. Family 1, there are basically six sections, 5 major sections about types of openings and types of structures, and I thought I'd talk about that. The first one he has is Family 1, it's d4 versus d5. There's 7 chapters on it. And what he does with this, he has 23 pages on the Isolani, isolated pawn, with d4, d5, sort of like the Baburin book we were talking about in a previous show. And I think that's an awful lot because so much has already been written about the Isolani. I think it's a lot of pages to use up, but still. And there's 16 pages on the Carlsbad, Carlsbad structure, which really mostly comes up in the Queen's Gambit Decline. So a lot of the space in the book is already being used up by very particular things that maybe he could have used a little less space on. And the Carlsbad structure has been covered in its own book and huge sections of other books and DVDs many times. So that's the Carlsbad structure. So maybe that could have been a little shorter in my opinion. Then there's a big section on the Open Sicilian. That's Family 2. And there's a big emphasis on these Najdorf structures. But they're very specialized. A lot of it's very specialized. For example, the structure with d5 versus e5 gets a lot of play. Just let me see if I can do this. Let me just show you the pawn structure without going into an actual example. Something basically what it amounts to is something along the lines of a knight d5 line. For example, I don't know. Here, let me see if I can get this right. Okay, I got to do it so it would actually make sense. But something along the lines of this captures and this. He has a ton of examples of this pawn here versus these two, and a lot of them start with that pawn there. And some of them don't. Sometimes the other pawn's back. So he considers that a basic pawn structure and does a lot on that. Then there's Family 3 is the Benoni. With the only thing about this is, again, there's just so many pages on things that don't happen that much. This basic Benoni structure comes up a lot and is incredibly valuable in other openings, not just the Benoni. This kind of thing is, I don't know about e4. E4 doesn't have to be played for sure, but this kind of structure with this against these two is very common. So it makes sense that he does quite a bit of coverage of that. But he also makes quite a big deal of, and let me see if I can do this right here, lines like, let me just, I don't know about the move order. I'll just make this up. Well, lines where white takes with the e-pawn, and of course a lot of times the bishop's here, and a lot of times h3 is in it. There's all kinds of things black can have and white can have that are different. But basically this pawn structure. And the only thing I don't like about that is he spends 19 pages, I think, on this structure. It's just not that common. And that means that at the end, well, the next section's about the King's Indian, the next one's about the French, and then already he's used up so much space that he has a miscellaneous chapter about all the other structures, assorted structures that he hasn't covered. And that means he's skipping an awful lot of them. And I think part of the reason is because he spends so long on a structure like this, which comes up in the King's Indian and the Benoni, but how often? I'm sort of doing a book review here. I think the book's still definitely worth having, and these are key structures that you should know things about, whether you play them or not. But it is kind of funny. There's just 2 to 3 pages on the dragon, 3 to 4 pages on the incredibly common Scheveningen pawn structure, And very few e4 versus e5. I'm not sure why he did so little on that. He waits to the last chapter and he does something about the closed Ruy Lopez, just 4 pages. And it's actually a very particular position in the closed Ruy Lopez that doesn't even come up that much, a particular pawn structure. So it's a strange book that way, but covers a lot of territory. An awful lot of the structures of chess are covered, and incredibly, I think it was very well written. The examples are great, and he does the main thing, which is he familiarizes you with the structure and makes you comfortable playing it. So that's something to remember. And by the way, the other thing, remember I kept trying to remember the author whose name begins with M, and it was Draven Marovich, who wrote 2 books on pawns, older books for Gambit Publishing that I thought were really excellent. One was Understanding Pawn Play in Chess, and the other was Dynamic Pawn Play in Chess. And strictly speaking, those aren't really just about structures, but they'll cover a lot of structural issues, and maybe it's better that they aren't just about structures because they kind of give you a more holistic view of how to play with pawns. So I'd say they're very, very instructive and worth thinking about. I also think Ivan Sokolov's Winning Chess Middle Games, An Essential Guide to Pawn Structures is a fantastic book, just a wonderful book, very instructive. It's very limited. It's just about certain d-pawn openings. But if you want to have a serious understanding of chess, you probably should know those structures. They're very basic. Nimzo Indians and Bogo Indians and Queen's Gambit declines. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything else. They're just classic middle game structures that he talks about in a very profound and wonderful way with terrific examples. And the last thing I was going to say is if you're an ICC member, you can go to my own middle game lectures in the series Beyond the Opening, which is a very thorough coverage of pawn structures. I didn't realize I had so many. I have 72 videos, full-length videos about pawn structures. And if you want to, you can go to www.chess. I don't get any royalties for these, so this is not really a self-promotion or anything. I just think it's a great place to look at pawn structure material. Go to www.chessclub.com, sign in, click on the videos link at the top of the page, scroll to the very bottom of the page that you've gone to, that you've just linked to, and it's way down there, and it clicks on a tab saying, I am John Watson Shows. Then on the next page, they just have a couple of irrelevant things, and you have to click on more videos, and then you get all my old shows going back to 2007. Those are the archives for my old shows, which also, by the way, have those interviews we talked about. So I've been asked about how to get to the old archives on ICC. If you are an ICC member, let me repeat that. You go to www.chessclub.com, you sign in, you click on the videos link at the top of the page, and after you link to when that goes to a page where if you scroll way down to the bottom of the page, it's way down there. There's a bunch of tabs for each presenter. One of them is me, and the tab says, I am John Watson Shows. You click on that, then you get to just a strange page that has 2 shows of stuff by interviews by somebody else of Iranian. And then on that page, you click more videos, and you'll get back to all of my old opening series, all of them, and all of the old middle game series, all the old interviews. So it could be a lot of fun if you want to go back. But in the midst of those are these 72 middle game structures videos on things like pawn chains, Queen's Gambit decline, restraint, what I call restraint structures, all kinds of stuff. And so that's a possibility of somewhere to go to. Let's go back to the chat. Let's see what we have here. This is my novelty. Okay, hang on. This is fun. People are giving us novelties. Oh, we're going way back here. Okay. There we go, Jeremy. Thank you. Modern Bogo E6 by Antich. And I have that book, and I have looked at that's the C5 section I was thinking about. Very good. So you guys might want to go check that out. What's the best way for black when you play the Sicilian Dragon and White Castles long? Wow, that's a very, very general question, and we're talking now about maybe 100,000 games where that's happened. So I'll tell you my opinion, though. I think a lot of the lines are in trouble, but not there are a couple for sure that aren't. Now, one thing you can still play effectively as black is the so-called Chinese Dragon if White plays. Now there's a couple ways of castling queenside. The more popular one now actually is to castle queenside without bishop c4. But I did want to mention that in the bishop c4 lines, that if black plays this way and white castles instead of playing h4 first, that I think the Chinese dragon lines with rook b8 are still working pretty well. The line that I think is still respectable. Now watch me get this wrong. If h4, by the way, I think you have to go back into the old lines. The rooks, the 95, sorry, rook c8 95 lines, and those seem to be holding on for black pretty reasonable. That's if white plays h4 immediately. You can play h5, of course, soon. That's the old Soltis line. I'm confusing myself now. I'm not a dragon player, and I don't even teach any dragon players. But I was going to say that my impression is that this line with an early b5, the line that goes somehow like this, is still working okay. Topalov has played this. A bunch of people have played this. Jeremy might know something about this. But my impression is theoretically this is doing okay. This is very recent that someone, a fanatic, told me about this, a very strong player, that this is still working. So maybe I think that's the best line for black. Most other lines lead to a white advantage if he's careful. That's my impression. Okay. What's the best way for black? A line goes, Alan Llewellyn, a line goes c4, c5. So we're getting, hopefully some people are getting some free, if not lessons, at least ideas out of this. e4, d6, f4. Well, I don't know. I don't know what this is. Knight f6, knight f3, I assume. And we have d3 first, g6. I don't know if anybody's noticed this question yet. Knight f3, bishop g7, bishop e2. Castles. To the a6. Well, a6 is not necessary, but it's definitely a move. f5, logical. White's trying to get this kind of attack going, this kind of thing. I'm skeptical you can't just take that, but okay, he does take that. Oh, and he takes it back. Ooh, how strange. Now, normally in the old days, you just sacrifice that somehow. I know this isn't a Grand Prix exactly, but I think it's got similar themes, where White would still like, even without his bishop being up here, he'd probably like to attack along traditional lines like this. That's my guess. But instead, he just takes back and takes. This looks insane, but let's just check it out. Knight h4, bishop g6, knight f5. Okay. Okay, folks. Well, this is an important piece, so I'm assuming we have to take that. This is a, does it say if this is good for white or not? This is a line goes. Okay, this is cool. We can look at this. I suspect that that bishop is very passive and white's totally undeveloped. I just think black's a pawn up. Does everybody agree with me? This just seems crazy. Let's just get rid of that. This is a huge outpost for black. Black might even be better here without the pawn. Yeah, I don't believe this. I'll just tell you, Alan. This just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I'm not going to justify that with concrete lines, but black can play. Black can put the. I don't know where this rook goes somewhere. Black can even put a knight on one knight here and one knight here, for example. Even f5 is a good defensive move if he absolutely needs it. Yeah, this makes no sense. Sorry, that's my dogmatic judgment. I don't like to be so dogmatic, but I don't think this works very well. Okay, what else we have here? And feel free to disagree. In fact, you can always email me too. That's fun to get stuff, getting a little bit of a fight there. Have you tried elometer.net? No, I don't know what that is. That's interesting. 70. Oh, task. Oh, I see. It's to test your elo. There are some sites like that test your strength. I don't know about the exact elo. Okay, so he went to this site, elometer.net. For those of you that aren't looking at the chat, or don't have the chat in front of you, and it gives you tactical or exercises. I don't know if they're tactical or positional. And he got an ELO out of it, and he got 1890. And he says in real life it's a bit lower. That's actually interesting. So it did a pretty good job of estimating your ELO. So that's really cool. And he says, by the way, about that dragon that he usually castles long with white when my opponent plays a Sicilian. Okay. Okay. Chess Style says, this is my novelty when I crushed Christoph's idea in a blitz game against him. Oh, well, this is cool. Okay, we'll see this one next. Wow, this is a very chat-heavy show. This is fun. I wanted to get back, by the way, to some other questions. I was asked about the World Championship. Okay, we have here a symmetrical English. Oh, it's the same one we were just talking about, I guess. Okay, knight f3. Oh, yeah, okay. No knight f3. This is a3, which, by the way, is what he recommends in this position. This is Siliki's recommendation in this position. I like a3. I've played it a lot, but I don't play it the way he wants to. Rook b1, castles. A lot of people play a5 here, by the way. Oh, I'll tell you one thing about Siliki's video I didn't like. One of the best, most flexible moves after a3 is d6. That always used to give me real problems. I think he really should have talked about the order of what he's going to do against d6, because frankly that was one of my problems. And a lot of top players play d6 too. It's interesting. It's anyway. So continuing with this, we have knight f6, rook b1. Oh, and by the way, that might transpose to one of Siliki's lines, so I understand that, but I don't think it necessarily transposes. Okay, castles, b4. Takes. A6. A6. Well, I don't know. I don't get it. Did I get this wrong? I might have gotten this wrong. Bishop c6, knight c3, knight c6, a3, knight f6, rook b1, castles, takes, a6. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would tend to play something like either d3 or e3 here. Is my first guess. But anyway, let's just see. What did White play? White played d3, b5. Now, are we sure you can't take that? This is kind of wild. I think black has some compensation for the pawn here, but how much I'm not sure. Interesting. Okay, that'd be my first question to you. Can white just take that? It's a funny position. Boy, this would take a lot of study. I think black has some play but he is going to be pawned down, it looks like. Okay, and what else can white do here? Just develop, I guess. Yeah, if b5 can be played, that's probably an equalizer, because if black can get moves, these kind of moves in, maybe just even bishop b7, he must be okay. So if white can't play knight takes b5 or c takes b5, then it seems very unlikely to have much of an advantage. Probably black is equalized, so that's kind of a cool move. You didn't give any more moves. The question was, did you win? And I didn't get an answer back to that. So chess style, did you win the game? That's one thing. Well, you did, it says. He says you crushed him. He crushed his idea. So that's cool. I guess I'd say please look at knight takes b5, because otherwise it looks like completely sound for black. But a6, d3, I don't know. What if he had played something else here? This is a weird idea for... Yeah, it's not easy, is it? Okay, I can sympathize with what's going on here. Do we have a d4? Is that crazy? I guess that's kind of loosening, isn't it? Okay, I don't know. Does anybody have any ideas here? This is a strange one. Just okay, but if you did okay, I mean d3 to me makes an awful lot of sense actually. But as I say, after that we have to look at knight b5. This is great. This is fun. So maybe this is a good way to play it. A6. That's a funny looking move. I'm a little surprised. Now, of course, white can always just develop or something. He could set up a Botvinnik structure, this kind of thing. That's not the end of the world. Maybe that's a possibility to look at too. But black should be okay here. And black is, real respectable game. So if white has anything, it's just some tiny advantage. On the other hand, that's the problem with symmetrical. Really, white's advantages are sort of illusory. I like that. So we found a new idea, a new way for black to play it. I know sometimes black plays a6 immediately, and then there's these old lines like this. Now, Yasser Serouin used to play queen a4 in this position. I think I played it once in one game. But it's really just equal in the end. And if you play like this is very well known. White's got various ways of trying for an advantage with knight f3, for example, but this is considered equal. So what Siliki says is that after... Oh, I'm sorry. Shouldn't have done that. Siliki says... I might as well show you where we got this from again, for those of you who are interested. Good safe line for white. What Siliki says is that now you don't have to go ahead with that plan. Now that these two moves are in, this move is a little stronger than it would have been on the last move. That's what he says. I don't know how true that is, but it's an interesting idea. Chess is so infinite. I mean, even this idea of playing a3 and a6 is one of the standard answers, and then just playing e3 and going back into this position, but without the a3 and a6 in, I don't know if I've ever seen that idea. It's probably been played, but But I thought that was kind of cool that there's so many ways for white to play such an innocent position as the symmetrical English. And you know black's going to be okay. I mean, if he plays well. But that's always true. That's true in all of chess, isn't it? So it's so fun that we have all these new and creative ideas. Hey, the chat has slowed down a little bit, folks. So what do we have here? We have, let me talk about what I was going to talk about next. Ooh, we're kind of over time already. I could wait on this. What are your observations regarding the upcoming World Championship? And then I have another game I was sent. Boy, none of these are that short. So I think I'm going to close up here, folks. It is past the normal, stopping time for the show officially. Thank you, everybody. I hope you're still on. I hope I didn't bore you to death. I love this show. This is great. Everybody had ideas. We had some famous players on here, by the way. I don't know if you guys realize that. We had some famous players and authors on, which is always a lot of fun. And I hope we have a equally successful show next week. But remember to send me your questions. I'm not getting quite as few emails as I used to at askimwatson@chessclub.com. That's ASKIMWATSON at chessclub, CHESSCLUB.com. And ask me anything. You can ask me about any sort of subject. You can ask me, get a free chess lesson. Ask me about some position that's been worrying you. Send me a game. If you want to show a game, I don't guarantee I'm going to show all games. It's best if they're instructive. If they have a question attached to them, that's a good idea. But I think everybody has fun seeing games. And so I really welcome those emails. I think that because one good thing about those emails is you can really take your time and get them right. Ask exactly what you really want to ask. And maybe give some material that you think is in a little bit more detail than you can do on a chat. So, so thanks everybody, and I'm about to. I hope to see you next week. Thank you.